Good evening, race fans, and welcome out to the Charlotte Motor Speedway for Season 16, Round 7 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series, presented by SM Racing Products. Today, once again, having some very bizarre weather here this evening. The kind of looming, all-encompassing fog and cloud cover has followed us all the way from Kansas last week here to Charlotte for the Charlotte 125, and these drivers are just going to, I guess, have to put up with it because I don't see this cloud cover moving away here anytime soon. 99% humidity, overcast here, 67-degree weather. And I mean, there's 12-mile-per-hour wind, but that is not doing anything to move this fog off the speedway. I think in the real world, they wouldn't allow drivers to race in these conditions, but here on the virtualiracing.com platform, we can get away with pretty much whatever we want. So these drivers will most certainly be driving here today. I'll tell you what, Charlotte Motor Speedway, a track with a lot of history in the real world and here for the ASRC Oval Series presented by SM Racing Products. Opened up back in 1960. This is the 31st time that ASRC has visited this speedway, and that's not even including unscored events for like week 13 or other just special community events. This is just the 31st time the league has been here in an official scored series. Mostly been here in the various road course racing series on the various Legends and Roval layouts, but this is the 8th visit by the ASRC Oval Series. Of course, past winners here, including Brian Zabelski, Brad Ringer, Steven Rex, Jason Mong, and Kevin West out here most recently back for the Charlotte 150 earlier this year. Then the Roval winner going to be Odyssey Adams Jr. and Charles Cruz took home the win on the Legends Oval back, I believe, in the Street Stock several seasons ago. And of course, still following the Real World 2003 racing season, in the Real World, Tony Stewart took home the win at this race, probably with a little bit less humidity and fog over the speedway. But nonetheless, these drivers are making their way down to the starting grid, so how about we take a look down there and see how things will be rolling off here this evening. Starting off on the pole here in the number 188 K9P Racing entry, that is going to be Joshua Rudolph, driver out of Medford, Wisconsin, starting off on the front row of this thing. To his outside in the number 85, that's going to be the Nihon Tiger entry of Brian Sabelski, multi-time league champion and winner here so far here in season number 7, or season number 16. This is round 7, excuse me. Starting his way up front, he's looking to try and take home repeat wins at this speedway. Back and forth, that's going to, or back and third, excuse me, that's going to be the Harley-Davidson number 44 of Mark Royce, followed by the Liqui Moly 38 of Brandon Feeney back in fourth. Back in fifth, that's going to be the number 4 M&M's entry of Daniel Sparks back in fifth, followed by the 42 of Michael Sparks back in sixth, both drivers for Mooselander Racing, and a Michael Sparks in the Mooselander Racing livery. Back in seventh, that's going to be the number 93 of Jason Gardner, league administrator, rolling it off back there in the ASRC paint scheme, back in position number 7. Back in eighth, that's going to be the branded number 45 of Mark Kluge, another member of the K9P Racing organization. He's going to be rolling off position number 8. Back in ninth, that's going to be the 15 of Garrett Streets in the SM Racing Products livery, one of the 2 founders of the SM Racing Products organization that sponsors the ASRC Oval Series. Streets, also a former champion here in the league, going to be rolling off position number 9th. Back in 10th in the Dirty Mo Radio number 14, that is going to be one of our road course ringer drivers here. That's going to be Nico Morelli, rolling it off back in 10th here at Charlotte, with the tail end of this 11-car field going home to the 24 CZ Robotics entry of Corey Logan, who is rocking a brand new paint scheme here this evening for the driver out of Noonan, Georgia. We'll see how it fares for him here this evening. Pace cars off. We're getting ready to go green flag racing here at Charlotte. And just like that, green flag up in the air. We are racing. So far, so good all throughout the field. No hiccups on the earlier goings of this one. I say that as Jason Gardner had a little bit of a off track coming to the green here, already down 3 positions from where he qualified in that number 93 machine. I think we might have seen maybe a little bit of a wheel spin coming to the green flag here, because that bumped him down a couple of positions there. Up the front, though, Brian Sabelski is our race leader here. Rudolph just behind, and big wiggle coming out of Brandon Feeney back in 4th there. Big wiggle out of the 38 Liqui entry. Still hanging on to the 4th position here, but he has Sparks and Kluge hot on his tail here, side by side, back for looks like the 5th position here. What an electric start has been here, Charlotte. These drivers are absolutely all over each other here in the early goings of this one. Sparks down to the bottom of the track, still battling it out with that Liqui 38 of Brandon Feeney, and Nico Morelli's down there trying to follow him through here as well. Now side by side with the 45 of Mark Kluge here going across the front straightaway, and a little bit of a wiggle out of that 14 machine on corner entry. A little bit of a bobble, nearly going down below the apron there. But so far, still keeping it all pointed in the right direction. Sometimes that's half the battle here, especially in these just absolutely bizarre weather conditions here we've had these last 2 races. We had drivers straight up just disappearing from the raceway last week, so I'm a little afraid what horror comes from the fog here for today's event. Of course, Halloween is right around the corner. You never know what might be going on down there in the infield. A little bit further back here, at the tail end of this pack is Garrett Streets, right on the tail of the 42 of Michael Sparks and the 45 of Mark Kluge. This is the last of this main lead pack here. Past that, it's Jason Gardner and Corey Logan, who are both several seconds off the pace right now. And big impact against the outside wall. That's going to be Michael Sparks around on the front straightaway, but he saves it. The green flag stays out. No caution for that incident. But that is going to bump Michael Sparks back down to 10th and probably back down to 11th as he is struggling to get back up to speed here. Really quick, we're going to take a quick look back at the incident there with the 42 and 15 just pushed up a little bit too hard, got into the outside wall, and Streets not able to get it slowed down to get out of the way, but all drivers keeping it pointed in the right direction. No caution flag out here on the speedway yet. And it looks like things have settled down here, so still green flag racing here. But our first little bit of car-to-car contact there here on lap number 6. Now looking back down here between Morelli and Feeney, who are battling it out here for the 5th position. Morelli already up +5 from where he qualified. He's going to get around that 38 without much difficulty. Will we see the same out of Mark Kluge? Kluge up +1 from where he qualified here in the early goings of this one. And every little bit of that attrition is going to add up here in the later stages of this race. Just a matter of making sure you keep your tires underneath you. Of course, always going to have new tires down in the pit lane, but want to make sure you have them out on the speedway when you need them the most. Especially if we end up seeing later race cautions, it might just come down to who manages to save these tires the best. Feeney down on the speedway, bottom of the speedway here, trying to hang on to this spot, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him forfeit it. Feeney, generally a driver that has been pretty solid about saving his equipment throughout the race, so I'd imagine here, of course, only 8 laps into today's event, I'd imagine we're going to see this driver, the 38 machine, try to save at least a little bit before we get out to the halfway point. Further up in the field, though, how about this battle here between Sabelski and Sparks? This is the battle for the 3rd position here between the two of them. And a little bit of a nudge there from Sparks to the back of Sabelski. That's going to bump him up the raceway. And here comes Nico Morelli rocketing up from behind in that 14 machine. We were talking during the starting lineup here that traditionally Morelli is a bit of a road course ringer, but evidently he has some speed here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Hot on the heels of that number 4 machine, and mind you, this is a driver who started back at nearly the tail end of the field here. Already up +5 from where he qualified and looking to make a move on the high line to potentially make that +6, maybe even +7 here if he can get around Sabelski as well in this battle. And Sparks going to drift up the speedway, get up into the outside wall. That's going to cause a little bit of a stack up. Sabelski pulling away here as Morelli gets on the brakes to avoid rear-ending that number 4 machine. So it's now about half a second in this battle between Sparks and Morelli. It's Rudolph right now leading the field with a nearly 1 second lead right now. A little bit further back here, Feeney still duking it out with Garrett Streets, who looks like he might be having a little bit of a connection issue here on the speedway. A little bit of an issue there, but no harm, no foul so far for these two drivers. And already 12 laps complete here. Turning lap times of roughly the 29 to 30 second range here, a little bit of variance. So far, I don't think we've seen anyone manage to breach the 28 second range. Right now, the best lap times look like to be, looks like a 29.63 by Joshua Rudolph is the best time so far here this evening. Things starting to get a little bit spread out here at the tail end of the field here. Corey Logan currently running back way far off the pace here. Must have had some trouble on the initial start here. Not seeing a whole lot of damage on that machine, but right now currently running about a second and a half off the pace roughly, and you can actually see the race leaders coming up behind there. Rudolph and Royce closing in on that CZ Robotics 24 here. If you take a look down here at the track map, you can see that 24 heading down towards the tri-oval right now. Not a whole lot of time left to play with before we see these leaders catch up to them. The gap is closing between Royce and Rudolph though. Got it down to, looks like about 0.3 of a second between the two of them, and Royce is closing in here. And already they've caught up to that lap car. That is the CZ Robotics number 24. Both drivers going down to the bottom to get around them. And so far so good for the two of them. A little bit of a wiggle out of Royce as it looks like he tries to maybe try and make a pass right across the start finish line, but not able to make the car stick and make it happen. But still right on each other's bumpers here. Now down to less than 1/10 of a second dividing the two of them. We might see a Royce try and go for a pass for the lead here in the next lap or so. It's just a matter of getting it set up, getting a good corner, and we're going to see it right here. Coming out of turn number 4 across the start finish line, Royce will be scored as your race leader that time by. Now Rudolph has to go on the offensive here. Can he claw that race lead position back up there, all the way up at the top of the speedway? Side by side, heading down the back straightaway, and this is exactly what Brian Sabelski back in third there wants to be seeing, is these two drivers duking it out and slowing each other down so that he can get an opportunity to close this gap up and potentially put himself into this battle for the race lead. Royce still managing to hang on to the lead for another lap though. And of course there are bonus points here, both for leading a lap and for leading the most laps. That is definitely something that both of these drivers are keeping in the back of their minds. Every single point counts here, and nose to tail between the two of them. Almost looked like maybe a little bit of bump drafting there. I'm not super sure if they made contact, but if they didn't, it was definitely a paper thin gap between these two drivers here. Rudolph going to back it down just a little bit here, but still hot on the heels of that 188. And you can see down there, Brian Sabelski is very much in the picture of this lead lap battle now. Within about 0.6 of a second from our race leader and gaining quite quickly here. Rudolph continuing to try to rip the high line while we see the other two going down to the bottom through the corners. As we crossed the line last time by, a 38.5 for Royce, a 38.7 for Rudolph, a 36.4 for Sabelski. So Sabelski is gaining some incredible speed here. Nearly able to go side by side with that 188 through the corner, but just not quite close enough to make it happen. Trying again down here in turns 3 and 4, and we might just see Rudolph or Sabelski be able to make the move here on Rudolph. Not quite, but still going to be side by side across the line. Rudolph still having the advantage here in this battle. And despite the fact the two of them are duking it out as hard as they are, neither one of them are really losing Mark Royce here. He's not really pulling away as these two throw hands together. And Joshua Rudolph going to bump up into the outside wall there. That's going to cost him a little bit of ground here. Cybelski follows through behind, but just not quite close enough to capitalize on it and try and make a move here. And something to consider too here, Daniel Sparks is getting close enough to start to be considered here in this battle here as well. The rest of the field kind of falling behind here just a little bit, but Sparks is starting to get involved in this battle for the race lead. And I'll tell you what, race fans, I feel like the further we get into this race, the heavier the smoke has become. Smoke, fog, whatever you want to call it. We did get a proposal from Garrett Streets that it might be smoke from wildfires settling in over the speedway here. Not 100% sure about that, but it's entirely possible. And either way, I'm a little concerned by the fact that it seems to be growing thicker with every passing lap. Of course, we do have the lights on over the speedway right now, so that is doing some help to aid driver visibility here, but it is still very hazy here on this 1.5 mile speedway. I kind of feel bad for the fans. I'd imagine looking across to the grandstands, it's going to be pretty hard to see what's going on the back straightaway right now. Looking at this main battle, though, it has started to spread out just a little bit. It's now a little bit over half a second between each driver. Mark Royce still continuing to lead the way in that Harley-Davidson number 44 driver out of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Coming into tonight's event, Mark Royce is currently being scored in 6th in the Season 16 Championship and back in 8th in the 2024 Overall Championship. So a win for him here would be pretty solid. Speaking of drivers looking for wins, further back here, this battle is heating back up once again between Sparks and Rudolph. I say that Sparks gets up into the outside wall, and at the same time, Rudolph is going to be the first driver to come make the call to come down pit lane here. I'm curious if this is a scheduled pit stop or not. And far enough in the race that I could see him going for a two-stop strategy here. But the fact that no one came down with him is a little bit concerning. So we'll see how this manages to play out for him. But I don't think he's serving any sort of penalty or anything like that. This should be a scheduled pit stop for the driver of the 188. And of course, down on pit lane here, we'll see what sort of time his crew manages to pull off. Bit of a slower stop for this driver. An 18.22 is going to be the time actually in his pit box. Not great. Generally, some of the faster stops we see in the roughly 14 to 15 second range. So with an 18-second stop, maybe gone a bit harder on fuel than what we traditionally see, or maybe just a little bit of difficulty getting those tires put on. Not 100% sure there. Mark Lude's going to be the next driver to come down pit lane, though, as this battle between Royce and Cybelski continues to rage on for the race lead here. Less than a tenth of a second just about between these two drivers. Cybelski falling back just a little bit here on corner entry, as now Royce and Cybelski both going to be coming down pit lane. Looking like a good solid entry for both of them, as we see Daniel Sparks coming down, Jason Gardner also coming down to pit lane here. And we'll see what sort of times these drivers are able to pull off. And that cycles Nico Morelli around to being a race leader, so Morelli will be picking up a bonus point for leading at least one lap here in today's event. Streets, Feeney, Sparks also all electing to stay out. That's Michael Sparks in the 42 that has elected to stay out. Royce going to win the battle off of pit lane. Had a longer pit stop, but a shorter actual time in his pit box over Cybelski. So that will cycle Royce back around to being the race leader once the rest of the field comes down pit lane. Of course, that is a big if, though. Nico Morelli still staying out. Street still staying out here as well. These two drivers might be trying to push for a one-stop strategy here this evening. Drain the fuel tank as far as they can get it pit with just fumes left, and see if that single pit stop will be enough to carry them all the way to the end of the race. It's been a bit of a mixed bag this season in terms of how these pit strategies have worked out at these mile-and-a-half speedways. Last week we saw the two-stop strategy prevail, but only just barely, so we'll see how things work out here at Charlotte. Of course, these drivers did have experience racing here in this Gen 4 car earlier in the season for the for the Charlotte 150, of course, that being in place of the Coke 600. Longest race of the season, and I believe the longest race the ASRC Oval Series has ever taken on. So a bit of an endurance challenge for those drivers. This one a little bit tamer. 125 is pretty much where we've seen most of the race distances be here this season. But we're going to see Morelli and Streets come down pit lane here this time around. That's going to leave Brandon Feeney still out on the speedway as your race leader. That's just Feeney and Michael Sparks that still need to pit here in tonight's event. Those two might be the ones trying to push all the way on the single stop strategy. We'll see if they come down anytime soon, though. They might still have some more fuel left in the tanks to try and play with and really push this strategy as far as they can get to go. And as they come out of their pit boxes, it looks like Streets is going to have a slightly faster pit time over Nico Morelli here. Now Michael Sparks going to be coming down. That leaves just Brandon Feeney still attempting to stay out for another lap or two here. We'll see how it works out for him, but the fact that every other car has already pit now makes me a little bit worried for how much fuel Feeney has left in the tank. I can't imagine he can go all that much further than he is right now, but still electing to stay out another lap in that number 38 machine. As Daniel Sparks going to be coming back down pit lane here. This will be pit stop number 2 for Daniel Sparks. I'm not seeing any damage on the front. Oh, well, there's a little bit of damage on the rear, but I don't know if that's enough to have to warrant a pit stop here, so I'm not entirely sure if this is a scheduled stop for Sparks or not, but this will be stop number 2 for that driver. Looking back out here on the speedway, this is the battle for the 4th position between Joshua Rudolph and Mark Kluge. All these drivers working to unlap themselves as Brandon Feeney finally comes down to pit lane here on lap number 36. So Feeney's going to be the last driver to pit. Will he have enough to stretch it all the way to lap number 83? It's going to be close. That's the best I can really get. He might be able to. I'm not confident on it, though. But if the cautions come out, we run some laps under yellow, that might play out into the favor of that 38 machine, but of course that is hinging on a very big what if. We don't always see yellow flags fly here in the ASRC Oval Series, so it's very possible that Feeney will still need to pit a second time and everyone in the field is on a two-stop strategy of sorts. Of course, Rudolph and Kluge pitted on laps 25 and 27 respectively. So, about 10 lap older tires here on these cars compared to that of Brandon Feeney, who is back out on the speedway, filtered back out in the 8th position. So we'll see if these newer tires are able to get any work done. Otherwise, it might all come down to when we see these drivers running on the main strategy coming down pit lane. Of course, it's kind of all over the place here in the strategy. Looking down here at when everyone pit at, there's a lot of variance on who's pit when. So we'll see how it ends up working out for him. Of course, Daniel Sparks down there back in 11th. The only driver that has made multiple pit stops here this evening, currently being scored 2 laps down right now. So I'm thinking that the second pit stop for that number 4 machine was not a scheduled one. But slowly working our way towards the halfway point here in tonight's race. Still got a little bit longer to go before we hit the halfway point. Right now, Mark Royce still your race leader with Sabelski not all that far behind. Call it about maybe 3 or 4 car lengths between the two of them. And you can see some lap traffic up just ahead. That was the Caesar Robotics 24 of Corey Logan, and I think I might have saw Michael Sparks up there as well in that 42. Let's see how this 44 manages to work his way through this lap traffic. Sabelski about half a second back right now. The only driver anywhere near this battle for the race lead. A full 10-second gap between Sabelski to the rest of the field here. So really, this lap traffic, the only effect this is going to have is on the battle between Royce and Sabelski. Everyone else still going to take a pretty long while to catch up to these lap cars here. Pull up the track map up, you can see slowly but surely catching up to the 24 and 42 machines. Both drivers, Corey Logan currently 1 lap down, would be put 2 laps down after this pass, and then Sparks right now is on the lead lap, would be put back to being 1 lap down and put in the lucky dog position once he gets overtaken by this 44. But of course that is also going on the assumption that a caution flag is going to come out anytime soon. Being in the lucky dog position really doesn't mean a whole lot if the lucky dog, or if the caution never flies, in order to claim the benefits of being the lucky dog. So who knows? We'll see what happens here, but we have officially gone halfway through tonight's event. 43 laps in the books, 40 left to go. And it's going to be Royce and Sabelski, your race leaders here for the time being, by a very substantial margin. A little bit further back, there's another battle going on here side by side between Jason Gardner and Joshua Rudolph here for the 4th position. Gardner just behind, nearly nose to tail with that 188, going to try and go for the move down here in turns 1 and 2, and it looks like he's going to make it stick. Will Morelli be able to follow through here? Not quite close enough that time around, but we have seen a whole lot of speed out of that number 14 machine, so we'll see if he's able to close it up here. Manages to get around the 188 that time around. Will he be able to gain on the 93 and potentially work his way up into the 4th position? Again, carrying just a whole lot of speed down through the front straightaway on corner entry. That seems to be where he's really gaining a lot here. Catches up to the number 93, pulls down low, side by side down the back straightaway, and it looks like Morelli is going to work his way up into the 4th position just like that. And now he has his sights set on the number 45 of Mark Kluge here, who is about almost a full second ahead, so definitely a lot of ground that Morelli will have to make up there in the number 14 machine. Up at the front, though, the battle for the race lead has closed up here to about 0.2 of a second, and they haven't even caught up to that lap traffic yet. Still looks like about 3 seconds between our 2 race leaders and the 2 lap cars up there coming out of turn number 2 right now. With how things are going, I'm starting to wonder, will we see the 2 race leaders actually catch that lap car before they have to come down pit lane again? Of course, these 2 drivers, they pitted on lap 28. Double that, that's going to have them pitting in roughly around lap 56. So we'll see if they're able to close that gap up. Right now, lap time's in the 30.8 second range, which is actually slightly slower than the lap times we're seeing out of these 2 lap cars that they're tailing. Looks like Sabelski might have had a little bit of a scrape against the outside wall on corner exit there. That's going to hurt his speed here just a little bit. About 0.4 of a second dividing the 2 of them now, and as they cross the line, we'll see how the lap times update when they tick by. sure enough, Sparks and Corey Logan are actually running faster lap times than our two race leaders right now. So it's entirely possible that we will see them slowly but surely start to pull away from our two race leaders, and they might not end up being a factor in this lead lap battle here after all. That said, as we cross the line here onto lap number 50, how about we take a moment to ride on board with the driver of that number 85 and get some onboard sights and sounds with these drivers in these Gen 4 NASCAR racing machines. And just like that, we see Brian Sabelski coming back down pit lane here for his second stop here of the evening. Mark Kluge also going to be following him down to pit lane for their second stop of the evening. Looks like they might have... No, that was just a visual error with the graphics there. I thought one of the Sparks was coming down here as well, but they are not. It is just Sabelski and Kluge down here on pit lane, as Mark Royce is being given the race lead here for the time being. And I say that now, Royce is going to be the driver coming down to pit lane. Going to be a 14.9 second stop for Sabelski. We'll see how it shapes up for Royce. A 14.6 second stop for Kluge. And we now have Jason Gardner coming down here on pit lane as well for our second stops of the evening. And I think these drivers should be just about okay to make it to the end. It's going to be close, but I think they should be all right. Another 14.6 second stop for Mark Royce. For Gardner, looks like it is going to be a 15.3, so definitely a slower stop for Gardner there. Now Morelli going to be the next driver trying his luck down here on pit lane. We'll see what that crew was able to do for the number 14 machine. Morelli running up +6 from where he qualified right now. Of course, Garrett Streets in the race lead is up +8 from where he qualified, but after this pit cycle completes, that might get shuffled around here a little bit. Morelli down in his stall here. It looks like it's only going to be 11.9 seconds for the driver of that number 14 machine. I think he might have avoided putting tires on there. I think that might have been part of the reason why it went by so quickly. So for the time being, Garrett Streets is still being scored as your race leader in that number 15 machine. 25 laps left to go here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The fog continues to encroach as darkness looms over the track, but so far we haven't seen any funny business here on the speedway. No one getting abducted or vanishing into the fog mid-race. So far everything's looking pretty okay here on the speedway. Joshua Rudolph going to be the next driver to come down pit lane here. Looking like a little bit of damage on the right front of that 188 machine, so hopefully nothing too catastrophic. I would imagine that the crew isn't even really going to bother with messing with that at all. Daniel Sparks also coming down here for pit stop number 3 in that M&M's entry. Currently being scored 3 laps down at the time of this pit cycle, so I'd imagine that not a whole lot's going to go on here to help him. 15.4 for Rudolph, though. Definitely going to be one of the slower pit stops we've seen here today. We'll see what Sparks manages to pull off here now. As we still have, looks like 3 more drivers that needs to pit. Michael Sparks, Brandon Feeney, Garrett Streets all need to come down another time here. And it looks like it's going to be a 14.6 for Daniel Sparks as he makes his way back out on the track. Really not a bad stop by any means, but it's not going to be a whole lot to help him when he's currently being scored 4 laps down. Looking side by side at the battle for the race lead here between Garrett Streets and Brandon Feeney. Feeney looked real close to making the move happen, and it looked like Streets is up into the outside wall. That's all she wrote. Brandon Feeney, your new race leader, just like that. Corey Logan's come down on the pit lane here now as Brandon Feeney takes the lead from the number 15 machine. And that looks like that was a pretty severe wall scrape because he's all the way up to 0.8 of a second between himself and Streets just like that. But it ain't lasting very long. Streets has already closed it down a full 1/10 of a second just through turns 1 and 2. Losing a little bit of ground on the back straightaway, but seemingly gaining it all up mid-corner as we see Feeney come on down to pit lane. Not going to be the last driver to pit this time around. Definitely interesting to see there. We'll see if he manages to get a decent time down here on pit lane, and that might just manage to work out for the driver of the 38 machine. Of course, Feeney comes into tonight's event leading both in the Season 16 Championship and in the 2024 Championship. All in all, having a really solid season here in that 38 machine. He said for the 2024 Championship, he basically has to not show up for the remainder of the races in order for him to lose the championship, and that seems to be about right here as he's coming in here with a 400-point lead over Corey Logan, just about. It's going to be a 15.8 second stop here for Brandon Feeney, though. Definitely, I think that was actually the slowest stop that we have seen so far here this evening, so maybe a little bit of damage that needed to be repaired on that 38 machine. He's going to cycle back out in the 7th position as he gets around Nico Morelli right there, who's way off the speedway and now is way up in the air. Caution flag is out on the speedway for the first time here this evening. I don't know what just happened, but that was a car airborne. And in the middle of the pit cycle at that is going to put Garrett Streets and Michael Sparks in a bit of an awkward position here. As well, really everyone who's currently being scored a lap down under this yellow. Let's take a moment. Let's try and figure out what happened to bring out this caution flag with the 14 machine. You see him up there hard into the outside wall, off the pace. Manages to get it off the wall, nearly collects Brandon Feeney, and there's the 188 of Joshua Rudolph nailing the rear end of that 14 machine. Gets pretty solid airtime. That's going to be what brings out the caution flag here. Same moment, let's ride on board with the 188, see what he saw in this incident. Definitely quite the impact there. We'll take one more view down at this. Of course, with all the fog, it makes it a little bit difficult to see here. But just a little bit off the pace, got that strafe up against the outside wall, finally manages to pull the car off the wall, and it kind of jerks down to the middle of the track. Really lucky save there by Brandon Feeney, but just not so lucky for that 188 machine. So that is going to be what brings out our first caution of the evening. Morelli still down here on pit lane for over a minute now, so definitely some repairs being done to that machine. It's looking like right now Mark Royce and Brian Sabelski are being scored as our two front runners right now. Of course, that yellow coming out in the middle of the pit cycle kind of screwed everything up for a decent chunk of drivers here, so we'll see how things actually sort out once we take the green. We do have some drivers down on pit lane. Sparks, Streets, and Gardner, Michael Sparks, excuse me, are all down on pit lane. Nico Morelli, of course, still down on pit lane as well, getting repairs. And it looks like we're going to see Daniel Sparks and Joshua Rudolph also come down to pit lane here under this yellow. Sure enough, both those drivers are down on pit lane. That will properly cycle Royce and Sabelski up to the front of the field. Corey Logan looks trapped back there, back in the C0 box 24. Logan is currently being scored back in the 9th position. Looks like 2 laps down at the time being. It does look like that 24 might be getting sent to the tail end of the field here. Feeney also down on pit lane right now. So we'll see how things end up going here. It looks like it's probably going to be either a 14 or a 13 lap shootout to the finish here at Charlotte. The darkness continues to encroach on the speedway. The fog has not cleared up whatsoever. So we'll just, we'll have to see how things work out here for these drivers in these final couple of laps. Now that most of the folks have come down pit lane, it's starting to get a little bit more straightened out here for the running order. But right now it's looking like it's going to be Royce and Sabelski as your front row. That's going to be Kluge and Garrett Streets for row 2. Michael Sparks and Brandon Feeney for row number 3. We have a couple of drivers that have been down on pit lane longer than it looks like they should have. Jason Gardner's been down there for 37 seconds. Rudolph is still down there getting repairs. Morelli's still down there getting repairs. Daniel Sparks has also been down there for nearly a minute and a half now, so not quite sure what is going on for some of these drivers. But they are making their way back out on the speedway here. Lights are out on the iRacing.com pace car, so we are officially stacking them up 2 by 2, going to be going green flag racing again next time around the speedway. So it's going to be 14 to go when we take the green flag here. And I'll tell you what, race fans, the gloves are going to be coming off. It is going to be just absolute combat here in these final couple of laps, because this might be the final opportunity to make some big moves. So it's looking like we've got 7 cars still on the lead lap here for the time being. 7 potential winners here at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Of course, Sabelski has won here in the past. Mark Royce has not yet. Neither is Mark Kluge, and neither has Garrett Streets. So we'll see what happens here. The pace car is going to wisely make the dive down to the safety of pit lane here, and we'll go ahead and throw the green flag back up in the air and see what these drivers are able to do here in these final 14 laps. Pace car is in, and green flag is up in the air here once again at the Charlotte Motor Speedway, and Mark Royce off to a very early lead, side by side just behind for Savelski and Kluge. Kluge running his way all the way up to second. Streets following up high, trying to see if he can't work with Savelski to get up to the front here, but just not quite able to make it happen. 2 by 2 for your top 4 positions here on this restart. Street sends it in deep there, trying to get up on the high line and make something work up there. Not quite able to. Still side by side with that 45 of Kluge. They just tried to make the inside line work here. Michael Sparks is up here in this battle as well. And it is still anyone's game here. You can see your top 5 all in a bubble right now. And that's going to be Gardner and Feeney back in 6th and 7th as the last 2 drivers still on the lead lap who have fallen away from this lead lap pack here just a little bit. 12 to go as we cross the line. And still, so far so good. Nothing too crazy has happened. At least so far. Everyone's playing nice for the time being. I'm a little cautiously optimistic. You never know what might happen here in these final couple of laps, especially as some of these drivers starting to think about maybe going 3 wide here. Sparks having a little bump off the bottom of the apron. He's going to drift up the speedway and lose some ground there. Still side by side for Streets and Sabelski for the second position, though. Streets is going to clear him, but I have a feeling that that is not going to last particularly long here. Going to be 11 laps to go here at Charlotte around this 1.5 mile speedway. The clock is ticking here for these drivers, and Streets is gaining on our race leader down to about 0.1 seconds between these 2 cars. As we get the double high five up in the air from the flagman, going to be 10 to go here at Charlotte. Still running under the green flag, Royce and Streets starting to slowly pull away from Sabelski and Kluge, but only just barely. Just behind Feeney and Sparks are battling it out. Now side by side for the race lead. Streets is going to make the move down to the bottom. And it looks like he is going to make it stick here in that number 15 machine. Garrett Streets, your new race leader. Will he be able to hang on to it here with 9 laps left to go? Sabelski still hanging out just behind, waiting patiently in line as Streets gets up into the outside wall there just a little bit. Still hanging on to the front of this field. Sabelski closing in on Royce here as well. Looks like about 0.2 of a second, equally dividing all 3 of these drivers. Sparks falling back here just a bit. So does Feeney. And Kluge honestly losing the pack here a little bit here as well, but not far enough to be counted out quite yet. Well, with 8 laps left to go here at Charlotte, these drivers really don't have a whole lot of time left. These laps are going to be clicking off faster than they can keep track of. Heading down through turns 3 and 4 once again. Gonna be 7 to go as Streets pulls away to a 0.6 of a second lead here. Will Royce or Sabelski have anything to give to this driver? Because he is absolutely pulling away right now. Last time by looking at the lap times, Garrett Streets was the only driver to reach the 29-second range last time by. Everyone else was a 30-second lap time or above. And even still, Streets is still continuing to gain for the race lead. Royce and Sabelski are falling back here, nearly a second of a difference for the race lead. Going to be 6 to go now here at Charlotte. Sabelski still hot on the heels of Mark Royce, still battling for that second position, but as we get ready to get the big high five up in the air, they might be far enough back to not be able to catch up to that number 15 machine. We'll pull the track map back up just so you can sort of see where everyone's running. But that 15 machine is slowly but surely pulling away from the rest of the field. Last time by, Michael Sparks was actually the fastest driver on the speedway, but Garrett Street's the second fastest, then Mark Royce, then Mark Kluge. Sabelski all the way back in fifth in terms of lap time last time by. Going to be 4 to go here now as we cross the start-finish line. Streets has pulled up to a 1.06 second lead. Streets seems to be in the clear as long as a caution flag doesn't fly or he doesn't make any sort of major mistakes here in these final couple of laps. That 15 machine looks like he is good to go to etch his name in the record book here in season number 16. And down through turns 3 and 4, Sabelski still all over the back end of Mark Royce. Going to be 3 to go. Only about 4.5 miles left of racing. And it's all down to this battle between Royce and Sabelski for the second position. Street's now up to a 1.5 second lead. Further back, Kluge and Sparks have both fallen away from this battle here just a little bit. Now going to be 2 to go from the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Streets continues to lead the way. And as long as nothing goes wrong in these final 3 miles, we might see a new race winner here in season number 16. And I believe a new race winner for the entire 2024 championship. I believe this is going to be Garrett Street's first win of the year, should he pull it off, at least for the ASRC Oval Series. Sabelski sends it down low, trying to make the move on the 44, gets up alongside him, big wiggle coming out the corner, side by side as the white flag comes up in the air. Streets up to a 2-second lead now. Sabelski right on the heels of Mark Kluge. It's all going to come down to how these drivers manage to work down the back straightaway and down into turns 3 and 4. Will Sabelski be able to make the move happen? Right on the heels of the number 44 machine as the checkered flag goes up in the air. Garrett Streets takes home the race win here at Charlotte. It's going to be Royce and Sabelski rounding out the podium here this evening, but it's going to be Garrett Streets that gets it done here tonight. Takes home his first race win of the 2024 Gen 4 Championship, I believe. That's a lie. Garrett Streets has won this season. I am just really bad at keeping track of stats. So I believe this is actually going to be win number 3 for Streets. If that is... Yep, sure enough. Looks like it's going to be win number 3 here for Garrett Streets. Getting it done for... Is it at least the first time in season 16, or am I just losing my mind here? Okay, well, it will be the first time here in season 16. That's good enough. My stats aren't completely incorrect. They're only just mostly incorrect. Alrighty, race fans, don't go anywhere. We will be back here in just a moment with some words with your top 3 finishers here this evening. Alrighty, race fans, welcome back to the incredibly foggy and or smoky Charlotte Motor Speedway. 125 miles of competition here in the books, and it's going to be Garrett Streets taking home his first win of season number 16 here this evening. Garrett, how are you feeling here tonight?
Feeling pretty good. Definitely got pretty lucky on the strategy there. Stole one from Brian. They definitely had the fastest car all night, but I suppose a win's a win, and it goes in the record book as such. And I will be more than happy to take it.
How confident were you feeling coming into tonight's event about potentially taking home a checkered flag?
Not much. I have not raced in a really long time. At least a month, except for I did make a one-off at Homestead in a hosted race last week. But outside of that, I haven't been racing at all. Just been super busy. So I was hoping just to come out and have a good run and keep the car clean, which I didn't do. But yeah, no confidence at all. Just wanted to come race and have a good time.
Fair enough. I mean, the car's looking pretty clean to me here, so I'd say you did a good enough job about it. Uh, at what point tonight do you think things really started to work out in your favor here?
Only when the caution came out at the very end there at lap 63 or whatever. I was playing the strategy of running super. I got in the back of Michael there super early in the race when he got in the wall, and I had 44 seconds of optional at the first pit stop. And so I was just hoping that if I ran long, maybe I could catch a caution and get the damage fixed and hopefully get some speed back in the car. And it just so happened to time absolutely perfect. I had just made it past the pit entry line when the caution came out. So yeah, I got super lucky on the strategy there, and then had a pretty good feeling with fresh tires versus everybody else that I'd be able to have the speed to get it done.
Fair enough. You certainly managed to make it work out for you here tonight. And of course, you said yourself you haven't raced here in a while. What do you think the chances are that we're going to be seeing you in these final 5 races of competition here this season?
I'm hoping to make it. Like I said, I haven't been racing a ton. My internet's been pretty cruddy, and so it's not a whole lot of fun to go out and race and be a blinker and hopefully risk ruining people's races. So I just kind of haven't been on a whole lot, but I've been missing it quite a bit and missing running with everyone here in ASRC. So have had an absolute blast running the Gen 4 stuff. It's my favorite car on iRacing, and sad that I've missed as much as I have, but thankful for the times that I've been able to make it on track with everyone.
For sure, it's always great to see you out here on the Speedway. Of course, if you do make it out next week, we will be heading down to Martinsville. If you make it out there, what do you feel like your chances are going to be at that track?
I mean, I'm not going to say good chances, just from a standpoint that I haven't had much seat time. I do really enjoy Martinsville and have a tendency to run pretty good there, and just about anything that I run. For some reason, it seems to suit me, even though short track racing isn't my forte or my favorite thing to do. But yeah, I think if we can keep the car clean and stay out of trouble, going to be a wild one that we should hopefully have a chance to run pretty well.
Good deal. Well, hopefully we'll see you out there. Of course, you are pretty busy, so who knows what happens, but I'm sure we're all hoping to see you out here, and of course the folks tuning in. But before we let you go here for tonight, the microphone is all yours, Mr. Streets. Who you want to thank for making everything happen?
Yeah, I want to thank Jason for all of his work he does putting on ASRC, as well as you. Thank you for all your work with the league and putting on a broadcast. It's awesome to see everything from the broadcaster's point of view and go back and rewatch the races and keep up with it if I'm not racing. I want to thank all the guys that come out and run every single week. It's awesome to have a great group of people to run with week in, week out. And I want to thank everyone for supporting SM Racing Products. If you're looking for any hardware, check out sm-racingproducts.com. And then lastly, I want to thank my girlfriend Morgan for cheering me on. She's watching the broadcast and going to go, I don't know, watch some TV or something to celebrate after this one.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out here tonight. Congratulations on the race win, and hopefully we'll see you next week in Martinsville.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you, Aiden. Have a good one.
Yes, sir. And finishing back here in position number 2 in the number 44 Harley Davidson entry, that's going to be none other than Mr. Mark Royce. How are you feeling here this evening?
I'm good, Aiden. How are you? That was so much fun.
I'm doing pretty good. I'm out of breath as I tend to be at the end of these broadcasts, but I guess that's a good sign because it means y'all are giving me a whole lot of stuff to scream about here this evening.
Yeah, we'll keep it short. I just had so much fun racing Brian and everybody, and I knew we were sitting ducks with those older tires. So congrats to Garrett, and I'll say thanks to everybody in this league that shows up every week and runs green flag laps. Man, it's so much fun.
Yeah, always great having you out here. Of course, only a couple of weeks left to go. We got Martinsville, Atlanta, Phoenix, Rockingham, and Homestead. Do you think you'll be taking home wins at any of those tracks here?
Well, my wins that I do have came on flat tracks. Martinsville's flat, but I don't know about that one, and we'll see. Every guy in this league can win that race, I think. And once you get into a rhythm, it's a fun track.
Fair enough. What do you think might have had to have gone different here tonight for you to be taking home another win?
Well, just green flag. That yellow put Garrett in the catbird seat, so they say, and it was just me and Brian were battling for second. That's all there was left, and I think me and him were within a second of each other the entire race, including pit road. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely a heck of a race for y'all, though. Of course, I won't keep you here all night. I know y'all got stuff to do and maybe some practice to do before we head to the short track. But for now, the microphone's all yours, Mr. Royce. Who you want to thank for making everything happen?
Just congratulate Garrett. Thanks for Jason for putting this all together, and thanks to all the guys who show up and put on great races. And thanks to you, Aiden, for doing the broadcast. Appreciate it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right.
And finishing back in position number 3, that's going to be the number 85 Neon Tiger entry of Mr. Brian Sabelski. You taken home a win here at this track before, following it up with another podium here tonight. How are you feeling?
Honestly, frustrated. I'm not normally in this kind of mood, but when you got lap cars causing wrecks in front of people and then other people trying to do stupid stunts on pit road on your pit strategy and ruining the race for a lot of other people, yeah, I tend to be a little bit frustrated and upset about it because there's some good racing otherwise. But yeah, some people are just content to do their thing, and I guess more power to them. But hey, it frustrates the rest of us that are trying to actually run every week and all that too.
Fair enough. Still managed to walk away with a podium despite it all. It seemed like you and Mark were pretty much neck and neck all race here. Of course, Garrett managed to work things out here with that caution flag, but what do you think you might have had to have done differently to get an edge up over Mark?
I was just gonna try and catch up to him there. See if I could maybe make him run a little bit more aggressive on his tires. That seemed to work before, and I thought I could do it again. I probably could have, but Mark's solid. He's really good, and really can't complain. Can't complain too much about anything. He defended really well at the end there. Like just put his car in the right spot where it needed to be to keep me from being able to do it. And I wasn't gonna drive through him for second. Like we've raced each other clean all season, so I got no reason to do anything, be a jerk like that to him.
Yeah, definitely a heck of a battle between y'all all night here. Of course, looking into the future, of course, Martinsville next week, then Atlanta, Phoenix, Rockingham, Homestead. How are you feeling about next week in these final couple of races of the season?
Well, as long as there's not a bunch of other silly stuff happening like tonight, where there's a caution late that throws everything out the window and just benefits someone who's able to hold out and play their cards right. Which, by the way, yeah, Garrett's win was legit. He had a good call there. Got no complaints about it. It's a good run from him. Smart strategy, and it worked out. So hey, more power to you. But I would think just on pace, I think we probably should be competitive at the remainder of these tracks that I'm here for. So yeah, we'll see how it all shakes out. But I'm hoping next week's a little less frustrating for us folks, because I'm not gonna hold anything against anyone or anything like that. It happens what it happens. Just I always say I get frustrated at people, not because of stuff that happens, because there's the stuff that happens and they should know better. That's usually what will get me frustrated. It's like, if you know better, I expect y'all to be able to control yourselves a little bit. But hey, it happens. Move on next week. So that's all we can do.
Fair enough. Well, walking away with a podium finish here tonight, maybe not what you were hoping for, but still a couple of races left to go to try and take home more checkered flags to your name.
Yep.
Now, the microphone is all yours, though, Mr. Sabelski. Who you want to thank for making everything happen here?
I'm going to thank folks at McConey Setup Shop, official setup shop of NASCAR. Of course, Jason, everyone who puts on the league, some racing products, put together lovely button boxes that many of us use now. They also sponsor a league, which is awesome. So much appreciated on that. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here and watching, hanging out, and being part of it. Sorry we couldn't put on a good show at the end for you there, but we'll try next week. Martinsville will be I hope, fingers crossed, I hope it won't be too bad. It usually can be either good or a caution fest, and I'm hoping not caution fest.
Good deal. That seems like a solid plan to me. Thank you for coming out here for tonight. Congratulations on the podium, and I look forward to seeing you again in Martinsville.
Yep. Catch you then.
You heard it here first, race fans. Your top 3 finishers here this evening: Brian Sabelski, Mark Royce, Garrett Streets. But of course, those weren't the only drivers here in tonight's event, so how about we take a look down at how these remaining drivers managed to finish here this evening. Following your top 3 here, back and forth, we had the number 42 Mooselander entry of Michael Sparks, followed by Mark Kluge in the brand at number 45, rounding out the tail end of the field. Back in 6th, that's going to be the Liqui number 38 of Brandon Feeney, followed by League Administrator Jason Gardner in the number 93, back in 7th. 8th can go back to the 188 K9P Racing entry of Joshua Rudolph, followed by the 24 CZ Robotics of Corey Logan, back in 9th. That's going to be Daniel Sparks in the number 4, followed by Nico Morelli, rounding out the tail end of this 11-car field. For now, though, that's just about all we've got here from the Charlotte Motor Speedway for the Charlotte 125. Next week, heading on over to Martinsville for round 8 of season number 16, or that would be round 32 of 36 for the 2024 championship. So getting in the closing chapters of both of these series and getting ready to crown not 1, but 2 champions here at the Homestead Miami Speedway here in just a couple of weeks. For now, though, thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing y'all same day, same time, Monday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern for round number 8 of season number 16. Thank you all for tuning in, and we look forward to